My name is Bart, and I'm here to present you this morning. One of the few things I do in life is being a Drupal developer. I've worked on Drupal 7 and 8, Drupal core. I've developed modules for Drupal 5, 6, 7, and 8. And I've been around doing some events here and there. But this morning is not really about me. This morning is about you and what you want to learn. And we're going to take a look at the payment module for Drupal 8. A little windy here. So why a payment platform? Why would you do that? There are a couple of benefits to centralizing all your payment processing in one platform. Instead of having, say, a PayPal module for Drupal Commerce, one for Uber Cart, one to build a web form with. Because it all repeats the same code, mostly. Dry means don't repeat yourself, and that's the main philosophy behind payment. You write one module that does the PayPal processing. There's another module that does the link between commerce and Uber Cart, web form, and field API. So every little bit does its own little thing. Combined, you can do a lot of cool things. This principle results in the fact that you have more knowledge and time remaining to work on the code that you still have. Because instead of having to maintain multiple PayPal modules, you have the same number of developers who work on less code. In theory, that means higher quality, more reviews, more time to build new features. Hopefully that's so in practice. Turns out it usually is. But another very, very important consequence of this principle is that you increase the reusability of your code. Because you have little bits and pieces that focus on very specific things. You have the time to integrate that with a lot of other modules. So if you build a payment method for payment, for instance, you get automatic views integration, rules integration, because payment does that for you. You don't have to build all that yourself. Because, admit it, we don't all have a lot of time to work on these things. We'd rather spend less than more. Contrary to what you might think, if you have a central module that you have plugins for, it's really okay to make another bridge module that says, okay, I provided you very specific improvements just for PayPal and just for Drupal Commerce. So that little module bypasses payment entirely to make some optimizations, to pass on some very specific piece of information, for instance, or to let users configure some very specific behavior. And that is okay, because that is very specific to these two applications. What payment does, it centralizes the things that you need to reuse over and over again, like the integration with other modules, payment overviews, etc. Payment didn't come into existence straight away, like overnight. It's not like I woke up and, oh, it was there. It started about 3 years ago, when, actually it started longer ago. Around the time of Copenhagen, we sat down with a couple of people, and we decided to work on Ideal, which is pretty much the Dutch online wire transfer system for web shops. And the others quickly kind of bailed, but it kept my interest. I liked doing this e-commerce thing. And I did it more and more and more, and I got requests from other potential clients saying, oh, you do this, could you do that as well? And I got so many requests that I started to realize I have to duplicate so much of this code that I have here. Why not put it in one place? Why not find a solution for that? There wasn't any solution readily available that did what I needed to do. So in December 2011, I opened the version 1 branch for Drupal 7. I don't know if Nick Vayner was in the room, but thanks to him, he helped a lot with planning. And as things go and progress, version 1.0 was released in October 2012. It was stable, I thought. But people come and go. People have these weird requests. They want to use your module in ways that you could never imagine, which is very cool, but also very annoying, because your module doesn't do it, and you need to do more work to make that happen. So about a year and a half ago, I started doing this. There was a need for version 2 with new features, and at the time, I chose to do it for Drupal 8. We'll get back to that a little later. At that time, that was a year and a half ago, that was 3/4 of a year after the 1.0 release, 700 sites already reported using payment. If we go forward to last month, I released the 12th version, And by this time, about 3,000 sites report that they use payment as a platform for processing payments, which is cool. It's a growing number. The line is a little jagged, but it goes pretty steep. There's a little graph in Drupal that there's a line in there that shows how many sites use it. I just mentioned payment version 2. At some point, people kept asking me things like, oh, we want this feature and that feature. And once you've released a final version of a module, you can't just make these changes and add things because they break existing code. And the last thing you want to do is kind of screw things over for all your loyal users. It's not a nice thing. So I decided on making a completely new version. First step of that is, what do people need? People request a lot of things. And the trick is to kind of distill, like, okay, what's the fundamental features that they really do need? Because sometimes they want one thing, but if you build something more fundamental, they can use that to build that, or that, or that. The main feature that people wanted, or in this case, very arrogantly so, what I wanted for maintenance was pluggability. Version 1 had plugins, it did payment methods and payment statuses, and it was all like a custom solution to making things pluggable. I didn't use CTools because CTools was a little bloated for what I needed, but it also wasn't really consistent. So one of the main requirements for maintenance was do this in a very consistent and maintainable way. Payment version 1 started using object-oriented code a little bit. It sucked because I sucked at writing object-oriented code. So I was looking for a way to improve on that. Another thing that was kind of bad was the way that prices, or amounts of money, were formatted in the user interface. It was a currency code with a number formatted sort of like how US English does it, but not grouping separators. It was all kind of plain. So this was also a real requirement because people were like, this looks kind of weird to my clients. Because of all these things, we finally settled on not releasing payment version 2 for Drupal 7, but for Drupal 8. Mainly for these reasons. Drupal 8 is, at least we pretend to be, fully object-oriented. It uses PSR4, which is an internationally built, designed, and recognized class auto-loading standard. So no more registry with database queries to look up which class needs to be loaded. This was an important one. Drupal 8 ships with a plugin system, a very consistent way for allowing other developers to extend your module. I was looking for that, not only for me maintaining the module, but also this makes it easy for people like you to build on what I make. And that's the ideal situation. This is a cool one too. Quality assurance. You want to know that your code works. Testing in Drupal 7 is there. It's not really the ideal thing. We use PHP in Drupal 8, also an industry standard, and that just, yeah, all these reasons were pretty much enough for me to just go with Drupal 8. And these two, in Drupal core. Entity API in Drupal 7 was the only dependency that payment had. It's in Drupal core now. It's easy. Views is there too, so it makes it a little easier to create user-friendly user interfaces. But as we took out one dependency, the entity API, we introduced a new one. Remember that we had this requirement for proper amount formatting and doing some kind of locale stuff with users, because just displaying a number is not really nice to a user, because if you go through different countries, you see that prices are formatted in different ways. You want that to be the same thing on your website. That's what currency does. So this is a new dependency that we introduced. Payment 1 already worked together with the Drupal 7 version of currency. Now it's an actual dependency to make sure that things just work for you. So a little summary of the really cool things that we added to payment for Drupal 8. We've got 6 plugin types. The ones with a star next to them sort of already exist in the Drupal 7 version. The other ones are new. So there's quite a lot of pluggability, there's quite a lot of possibilities for you to extend and customize whatever you need. So you can throw out the default plugins, you can add your own, and do it better. Apart from the 2 entity types that we already had in the Drupal 7 version, we have 2 more. Because we have 1 more now, the other one's coming. People ask for custom payment statuses. Because, okay, I'm a site builder, I want to customize the workflow of my payments, do something with rules, set custom payment statuses. Couldn't really be done. You needed to write code to create new payment statuses. You can do that through the user interface by creating a new payment status entity. The last one was a big, big feature request. People want recurring payments or scheduled payments, or pretty much have a solution for telling the system at this point in time, execute this payment, transfer this amount of money. So this is a work in progress, but it's definitely going to be present in the Drupal 8 version. So a bit of an overview of the high-level things that are possible. Like I said, you can create custom payment statuses through the UI. Statuses are a big thing in payment. They define the entire workflow of a payment entity. What's the status? And depending on the status, the system can or cannot do particular things to it. Payments have bundles. In payment 1, you could add fields to payments, but they'd be the same for every payment. Payments have bundles that are based on payment types. So there can be a Drupal commerce order payment type, or an UberCard order, or a web form payment type. And per type, you can add different kinds of fields, which is cool because then your payment type plugin can add data like that. But you can also, through the interface, specify different behavior. Another feature that has been requested a handful of times was we want refund support and capture support. And while version 1 never actually denied you from doing that, there was no explicit support, so we added that as well. If your payment method implements this particular interface, bam, the system knows you support refunds, you get nice links here and there, and it's done automatically. Some people, rightfully so, complained about the payment reference field in version 1 that allows you to make a payment while in another entity form. So while you're adding a node or any other entity in Drupal, you could also create a payment for that node. But it would always do it in a pop-up, because some payment methods require you to go offset, and you don't want to screw up the form that you're filling in. But not every payment method requires you to go offset, but you'd still get the pop-up. We fixed that, so that's a big plus for usability. And again, we come back to scheduled and recurring payments. You might have guessed it's a big one, and it's coming. To go back to the plugins we have, payment method plugins are fairly similar to the payment method controllers we have in version 1. They process payments. They contain the logic to contact a remote server or redirect someone or set payment statuses. And for those of you who know the plugin system in Drupal 8, every instance of a plugin is tied to one particular payment. The plugin's configuration is specific to that payment. It can, for instance, contain the bank that your user, or that the payer uses, so you know where to redirect to. This is a new one. Payment method controllers contain not only the logic to process a payment, but it also contains the configuration forms necessary to create a payment method through the user interface. That introduced limitations, because what if you want to enter configuration once, but the payment gateway you use offers different payment processing brands, like PayPal, credit card, Ideal, was it Mr. Cash? But you want all these options to appear as separate payment methods to your users. They don't care that you use Ogone. They want to know, can I use Mr. Cash or PayPal? So that's what we did here. We took the configuration part out of the controllers and put them in a separate plugin type. So you now have a plugin. If you build an Ogone payment module, for instance, you will have one of these for the configuration, so site builders can use that, and you'll have a payment method plugin to do the actual payment processing. And how do you map those two? I'll show you in a little bit. Payment type plugins are already present in version 1 a little bit, and they were basically just a string and an array with a little bit of metadata about where does this payment come from? Does it come from Drupal Commerce? Was it made from a web form? And it was kind of shitty because it wasn't required, the data format wasn't uniform or unified, and kind of useless unless you really know what you were looking for. They're now fully fledged plugins. Every plugin implements an interface, so you know exactly which methods you can ask, or you can call and ask data from. And they can contain a lot of metadata. So if you have a Drupal Commerce payment type, it can, for instance, have a method that says get order ID. So you can get the ID of the Drupal Commerce order that this payment belongs to. It can automatically get the payment amount from the order for you, so you don't have to do any calculations yourself. These must be familiar. We sort of had plugins in the Drupal 7 version, and the functionality is pretty much the same, but they're now actual plugins. Instead of defining them in an info hook, you define them in a YAML file, which is easier for people who cannot code. It gives you a lot more overview, but they do pretty much the same thing. Line item plugins are fairly similar to the only line item type we have in the Drupal 7 version, but now you can provide different types. If you want a line item for a Drupal commerce order, it can, like I said, automatically give you the amount and the description of the payment based on the order. You can have, I don't know, a credit card fee line item. They're very much the same as the line items on an invoice, but with the difference that the line items on an invoice describe what you ordered. Line items on a payment describe the amount that is being charged to you. So if you want to pay an order partially, for instance, the payment line items will not display all the line items of the order, but only a few based on the exact amount that you want to pay, or that the system wants you to pay. This one's new. Many people complain that in payment for Drupal 7, you only had a little HTML drop-down selector to select a payment method. People wanted to accept that with pictures of the payment methods, like logos, or just want radio buttons with descriptions, and it wasn't doable because the system just used this one type, hard-coded, and if you really want to take the time and you're really good at programming, you could change that, but there was no API, and some change in payment could potentially break this. So this is now a plugin type. Payment now ships with a radio selector and a drop-down selector. And you can write your own. If you want vertical tabs or you want logos for your payment methods, so people can select them based on the logo, you can write this yourself. Someone can write a module for this as another module in Drupal org, and you can download that. What I said earlier is that we split out the configuration part from payment methods because it poses some technical difficulties. But if you have two payment or plugin types and you need to map those to each other, there's a trick for that in Drupal 8. Don't fret if you don't understand this right now. Just remember that I said deriver, and you can look that up online. There's a lot of documentation on that. So what you do is you write your payment method configuration plugin. It contains the form elements that a site administrator needs to configure a payment method. For instance, your account name and secret key for Ogon or Mr. Cash, your account with the bank. Basically all the information that the code needs to contact the third-party server. Then you write the payment method. And the payment method takes this information in its plugin definition. Also, jargon, don't worry if you don't get it. You can look it up or ask people like me and Iris. They take this information to contact the third-party servers in their definition, and they create a new instance. It has this information, and but you can create multiple definitions based on the original configuration. You have one configuration, you enter your account details only once, and based on that, you can, for instance, my wire's a little too short. You have one Ogon account configured, but you can make that appear as one Mr. Cash payment method, as one PayPal payment method, and one credit card payment method, using a deriver, because the deriver says we have one piece of configuration, and I want to make the system believe that these are three different payment methods dynamically. So that's how we solve the issue of letting one payment method appear as multiple. It's a little technical at first. It requires probably 20 more lines of code to write this little deriver class. We've done a lot of cool work. A lot of people have come in and have contributed to payment over the past few months. A lot of improvements have been made. We've got a few plans to improve yet. We're planning on having a release when Drupal 8 comes out roughly, but we're not completely done yet. This is the last big issue that's currently remaining and that we really want to get in, because there are so many payment methods or gateways that offer this functionality. We want you to be able to hook into that. So we're going to do this, and if you want this, please let us know. There's an issue in the issue queue about this. We want to know what the payment method of your preference needs for this to happen. Does it need a frequency? What information does it need so it can process recurring payments, so we can facilitate that in payment? These two things exist in Drupal 7, but not in Drupal 8, and the reason for that is that views and tokens are in Drupal core. Core is not ready. Rules is a third-party module, but it's not even close to being ready. So these things will be added to payment for Drupal 8 after a while, definitely, but the first version might be released without support for these modules, for the very simple reason that they just weren't done yet. I'm going to skip to a little demo, because I think we have time for that. and I'm going to show you the administrative interface of how this works in payment. It's very similar. Can I tell? Apparently I can. But there are a few minor changes. This is the wrong screen apparently. Hold on. Is it left over? It's on the left. And this is going to be tricky because I have to mirror my display. Hold on. Because the room monitor, I didn't tell the room monitor I was doing a demo, so he didn't know I was doing this. Displays. Where is my mouse? This is very embarrassing. Oh, there it is. More neck friendly. Okay, so this is a plain Drupal 7 install, and the only thing I really did was install the payment modules. It's one project, it has 3 modules in there. One's the base module with 2 field types. As in Drupal 7, you can find this under Administer, Configuration. This is the new toolbar in Drupal 8. Web Services, and then Payment. Let's go to payment statuses. It's a similar overview as the one to Drupal 7, but it has this little button here that lets you add a new payment status, select the parent status because it works in hierarchy, and then save it and you're done. This is all fairly straightforward. It's cool to play around with. The payment types are new. So I enabled the 2 field modules, and because they provide payment type plugin types, these are the 2 bundles that are currently available for the payment entity. And like with anything that has bundles, you can manage fields on it. This is only available when you have the field UI module enabled. It's the same interface as when you would add fields to nodes or to users or to comments. So there's nothing really new here. It looks pretty much the same as it did in Drupal 7 because the user interface didn't change much. However, this is a cool thing. Payment type plugins can define their own configuration page. So when you build a payment form, you can here select which method selector you want to use. Or you can, for instance, say, oh, I only want one of these payment methods to be available to my payers. And payment types can offer you any kind of configuration option that they want. So this is not just limited to these. One of the big differences in the interface is the payment methods. Because we split them up, there's a little extra tab there at the top. The list page gives you an overview of all the payment method plugins that are available. As you can see at the bottom, Unavailable, which also was sort of a plugin type in Drupal 7, is a plugin type, but it has no links. It has no payment method configuration plugin or entity, so you can't change it. It's a system fallback in case you cannot find any of the other plugins. If we go to the configuration page, this is where we see the payment method configuration entities based on the payment method configuration plugins. Jargon is a little difficult in this case, but I've been told it makes sense. What you can do here is add a payment configuration, and this is pretty much similar to what it was in Drupal 7. You select the type of payment method. In this case, we only have the basic one enabled, which works similar, but a little more sophisticated than it did in Drupal 7. You have a label, an owner. This message, some of you might have used it in Drupal 7, was only available to the basic payment method. It is now available to every payment method that uses the base class. So pretty much every payment method that's a little smart uses that and allows you to show a human readable message in your payment form with instructions to a user or a thank you message. The brand label is what was the generic title in Drupal 7. There's the administrative label up here. So as a site admin, you know which specific payment method this is, and it defaults to that. But say this is an outbound payment method, and you only want Mr. Cash to be available. You just give it Mr. Cash here. Or what we do by default is we have 2 basic payment methods. One is collect on delivery. That's when you pay the mailman when he or she delivers you the package. And the other one is no payment required. They're both basic payment methods, but we give them a little different title here. As mentioned before, we have postponed capture and refund support for payments. The basic payment method uses it as well, and you can select what will happen if it's supported and what will happen. When you've added one of these, you go back to this little overview. So like I said, this is collective delivery, and it works pretty much the same as it did in Drupal 7. You can edit, duplicate, delete, enable, disable. Here's all the information that we had. But because this is collective delivery, we want to use the capture. The payment is pending until the mail person delivers you the package or receives the payment from you, and then he or she can set the payment to complete it. That's why we want capture here. Everything else is pretty much the same as in Drupal 7. Many of the changes are under the surface to allow other developers to do more cool stuff, which ties in with our original philosophy to centralize functionality, don't repeat yourself, and spend more time and effort on things that really do matter. Cool, it works. Okay, what have we learned today? How does payment help development? Like I said, it saves time. It saves valuable knowledge and people's time. They can spend, because a lot of you have families, a lot of you can only spend a few hours a week on doing these cool things. We want you to spend that, or be able to spend that time on the things that are really important and not do something that someone else already did, but that's not reusable to you. Payment 2 differs from the version 1, mostly under the hood. The plugin types, the entity types, the other main difference is the whole object-oriented code, which is not really a difference in payment, which is a difference in Drupal 8. If you don't know how to write and read object-oriented code, I suggest you give it a try. It's a big change. It's what the industry's been doing for a couple of years now. And once you've gone through that, you will understand not only payment code, but you will understand any other module for Drupal 8, because procedural code with plain functions are being phased out. We're using classes and interfaces more and more. We have, again, 6 plugin types, 4 entity types, with maybe more to come in the future. If some of you have an idea for a new plugin type, we can always add that to a later minor version of payment, like 8.x.2.10 or something. And I hope I've been able to illustrate how you can create your own payment method conceptually. If you want to look at the code, we can do a sit down later. It's a little too technical to dive into for entire objects like here. But I'm happy to show you around and give you a little tour of the existing code and the base classes that already exist in payment. This is how you can reach me. If, for instance, you go home and you realize you forgot to ask a question, don't hesitate to tweet me, ask me something, or tell me something on IRC. I'm there pretty much whenever it's light outside. And this is the payment issue queue. If you think documentation falls short, let me know. I can write the documentation and help you on your way. If you find a bug, let us know in the issue queue. If you have a good idea for a new feature, open an issue there. So we can gather there with multiple people and discuss your idea and come to a solution. You're welcome. As in, you're welcome to join us there. Questions? This is eerily quiet. Okay, so then I'm going to ask you a question. Which one of you wants to write a plugin for payment? Okay, we're doing this web shop thing, and we have a very specific payment method the client wants to use, but there's no code for that yet. Who's here for something like that? As I see an Egyptian here at the front. Okay, so do you know more about that particular thing? Have I explained these things in such a way that you have learned more and know enough to get started with writing this on your own when you get back?
Yeah, I was 10 minutes late, and my mind was another 10 minutes late, so.
Okay, it was also late last time. Do we have a working microphone for the others? Did everybody in the back hear what he said? It wasn't coincidentally not very important, but okay. I'll repeat the question. He was a little late, so he only got part of my message. Okay. Who wants to use payment to build sites with? Not code, but link it up to commerce or Drupal. Okay, so I see a couple. Hey, I see a lot more hands now. Okay, so why would you use this and not use specific tools that are specific to Drupal or commerce or whatever? Why would you use something like this? What's your interest? Hands? Come on, I saw 10 hands just now. Don't be shy. Okay, so you really like the fact that we did most of the work and you can just build on that. Okay. Thanks, that's good to hear. I saw a couple more hands. What's your reason for going with this? Yeah.
When new services come, you can easily implement them, so you can adapt to change very fast.
Okay, so do I understand correctly? You said like if there are new services become available, it's very easy to because I think because you said like the work's already been done mostly, it saves you time and you can implement things very quickly. Yeah, that was one of the main goals we did. Yes, we had. Okay, does that open up more questions? Because I really want to answer your questions. Buzz.
I came in late, so you might have already told it. Apologies in advance. Will payment API be part of Commerce 8?
No. It is on purpose. It is a separate API because, I hope it was clear. Maybe it wasn't. You can connect this to Drupal Commerce, to UberCard. You can. There are a couple of field types that let you make payments. You can hook it up to WebForm, and you can write your own contexts that want to transfer money, want to make payments, but that are not a web shop, for instance. You can write that yourself as well. So it works with Drupal Commerce, but it will not be part of the package. Just for the reason that this is centralized. Because when it becomes part of Commerce, it is very easy to lose track of the original philosophy and accidentally add little code that adds a dependency on Commerce. And when you keep it separated like this, you can run your tests in an isolated environment, and you really know that it doesn't have traces of a dependency on any other project. It just works on its own. But I'll be right with you. So Drupal Commerce for Drupal 8 is in development. It's still very much in flux. It's a lot less stable than this because they only started developing it this spring or summer. So there's not going to be any integration soon, but once Drupal Commerce comes out, the bridge module will be built and you can use this together with Commerce. Okay.
Yeah,
I'll be.
I think for me,
No, you first. Sorry, you'll be next. Yeah.
Okay, for me, the biggest criterion is that the API is more comfortable, or as comfortable as the Commerce API. If it is, probably it is better, I assume. And that it's feature complete if I want to use it only with Commerce. And then, if that's already given, then it's of course better to do this generic thing.
Okay. I didn't get the beginning part very well, but.
So if I'm only interested in Commerce integration
Mm-hmm.
and not so much about the rest, and maybe just see this as for other people to use this in the future, then the criterion for me would be first that the API is maybe more comfortable than the Commerce API and more clean. And the other thing is that it would be feature complete within Commerce, so that I don't lose something by using this extra step.
Right. Yeah. So that is actually one of the dangers of building a generalized solution. You need to find a common denominator. What exists in all the systems, so you can map that to each other. It takes a bit of work to figure out how to work around these edge cases, a feature that exists in one platform but not in the other. And especially with the Drupal Commerce solution right now, the original code fell a little short. We're developing a new version that actually is able to map these functionalities much better from one system to another. But it is a good criterion, yes. If payment doesn't do something that you really need, I wouldn't suggest you use it. If you're just not interested in generalizing it, I still think it's a good idea to make a payment plugin. Because then someone else can come in like, oh, I don't need it with Commerce, but I need it with UberCard. But they can still maintain the same code base that you can then update on your sites again, so you get the improvements too. So it's also like shared responsibility, and it's why you don't build your own CMS, pretty much. It's why you use Drupal, but then on a slightly small scale. Does that answer the question? Okay. You in the back.
Are there any plans to make an integration between the currency module and Drupal Commerce?
There is integration.
Is there?
Yes, for Drupal 7 there's integration, not for Drupal 8 because commerce is just not ready yet. There's the, I think it's called currency commerce that I called it. And what it does, currency does a lot of cool exchange rate things, for instance. It maps that functionality to Drupal commerce. There are a few, it's not very extensive because commerce doesn't do a lot of currency handling in Drupal 7 yet. That is going to be extended in 8. But the features that do exist in commerce in 7 can be swapped for a currency solution. So currency in 7 and 8 has pluggable exchange rate providers. So you can use a couple of third-party sources, or you can have fixed exchange rates, and that can be hooked into Drupal commerce straight away. So currency commerce is some other. Okay. Okay. Well, thank you for coming. I'll be around until tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow evening. So if you still have questions and you forgot my IRC handle, just write it down, take a picture. I already saw someone do that. Talk to me. I'm very approachable. And I'd be happy to sit down, listen to your ideas, and figure out a solution together. Thank you for coming.